Good evening and welcome to our newsroom, dear viewers, for the English news edition. The top stories. The head of state today presided over the 60th International Summit of Islamic Finance. In all international news, a year of Trump at the White House, electoral setbacks for Republicans. Those are the major stories, and thank you for joining us in our newsroom. Under the high patronage of the head of state, Ismail Mergele, opened today at the Djibouti Kempinski Palace, the 60th International Conference of Islamic Finance, organized by the Central Bank of Djibouti. In this conference saw the participation of the members of the government, in particular the Prime Minister Abdulqadir Kamil Mohammed, the President of the Assembly, Muhammad Ali Hamid, the First Lady of the country, Mrs. Khadra Mahmoud Haid, parliamentarians, members of the diplomatic corps. This conference builds on the successes of previous meetings where more than 250 Islamic leaders from across Africa and abroad meet each year to discuss new strategies in order to boost trade and investment between Africa and Muslim nations. This year's theme evokes the need to unlock the economic and strategic potential of Islamic finance in Africa. It is about strengthening financial infrastructure, trade and investment by giving more value to assets or shares of capital called sukuk. Upon his arrival, the head of state, His Excellency Ismail Mergele, was greeted by the Prime Minister and the Governor of the Central Bank, Ahmed Osman. The conference opened with a series of speeches, including the Governor of Djibouti Central Bank, Mr. Ahmed Osman, the Director General of Al-Maghrib Bank of Morocco, Abdurrahim Bouaza, the Secretary General of the International Body, Dr. Hamad Hassan Mirre, and Paul Mutura, Managing Director of the Kenya Capital Market Authority. All have in turn expressed their views on Islamic finance, its global context, its growth, the creation of more and more Islamic banks by popularizing their regulations. And let's recall that this conference of Islamic banks in Africa is the 60th of its kind to be held in Djibouti. It is an innovative gathering that regularly brings together world leaders from all sectors to boost the potential of Islamic finance in Africa. The Managing Director of the Al-Maghrib Bank of Morocco, Abdurrahim Bouaza, and the General Director of the Capital Market Authorities of Kenya, Paul Mutura, affirmed that the Islamic banks are more obvious on the African continent, but those banks must impose themselves on the international market, they have insisted. The Governor of the Central Bank of Djibouti, Ahmed Ousmane, welcomed the holding of such a meeting in his speech in Djibouti, and for the 6th time in a row. He was pleased with the quality of the speakers and the participants as well. The Republic of Djibouti is also pleased to welcome for the 6th year in a row the annual Summit of Islamic Banks, said the President of the Republic. For more details, listen to his speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. The Republic of Djibouti is proud to host for the 6th year in a row the annual Summit of Islamic Banks in Africa. It is therefore a real pleasure and a proud moment for me to once again gather here with you all to move forward in this noble project and advance our shared vision of economic and social progress by advancing the development of Islamic finance in Africa. But before I continue, I would like to take a moment to have a thought for our Somali brothers who last month suffered the worst and deadliest terrorist attack the country has ever seen. We implore the Almighty to bring His eternal salvation to the many innocent victims of this tragedy and a speedy recovery to the many wounded. Our Ummah continues and will continue to be afflicted and slandered unjustly as long as these despicable acts are perpetrated in the name of Islam by cowardly and criminal individuals and groups. We condemn in the strongest terms those unspeakable and deliberate horrors that blindly strike innocent people. We cannot and must not accept them. Ladies and gentlemen, the present edition of the summit is of particular significance for Djibouti, as this is in the year when my country and I were awarded the prestigious Global Islamic Finance Award. While we appreciate this recognition of our modest contribution to the development of Islamic finance in Djibouti, it is also the result of the work of this annual IIBSA Summit, which year after year brings us greater international visibility. That's why I would like to share this award with all the eminent experts who accompany us in this project. This award and the international recognition it brings honors us, but at the same time imposes the challenge of going beyond, above and beyond in order to permanently anchor Islamic finance as a vector of economic and social progress in our countries. It would be inappropriate for me, in front of this august congregation composed of practitioners and international experts in Islamic finance, to outline the spectacular development of Islamic finance, especially during this last decade. Islamic finance owes its success to its very foundations and operating principle drawn from the Sharia, which shelters it from shocks and crises. In addition, its strong link with the real economy and the competitive nature of Islamic banks, as well as their innovative financial products, explain the remarkable performance of the Islamic finance industry. It is these two values that are intrinsic to Islamic finance that helped it spread beyond its natural sphere. This tremendous global breakthrough in Islamic finance and its immense unexplored potential certainly fills us with hope for our goals of rapid and sustainable development. But the question that arises acutely is the following: why is our continent struggling to attract these important resources drained by Islamic finance, since it is clear that the penetration of Islamic finance in Africa is still very weak, as assets allocated to the continent are estimated between 1 and 2%, depending on the source. Yet Africa is home to half of the world's Muslims. Gone are the days when Africa was a spectator of international development and relied solely on official development assistance for its survival. Today, Africa is a continent of strong growth and far from having expressed all its potential. This bodes well for future growth prospects and business opportunities for any investor. No less than $100 billion a year are needed to finance these investments. Thus, we are looking for resources, but on economically and socially acceptable terms. And in this way, we are firmly convinced that Islamic finance is a most appropriate response. That is why we attach a great deal of importance to this summit, as it is an ideal framework for exchange and reflections to guide us in the ways and means to follow in order to remove the various barriers to the development of Islamic finance on our continent. For our part, we are already focused on addressing the main weaknesses, especially when it comes to the improvement of the business climate, the strengthening of regulatory frameworks, and training in the fields of Islamic finance. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen.
In the second part of his speech, the head of state focused on the economic performance of Djibouti, which is recording satisfactory economic growth year after year. Once again, let's listen to the head of state.
The Republic of Djibouti has experienced strong growth over the past decade, with real GDP growth of 6% in 2015 and 16, and projected at more than 7% for the next few years. This performance are the result of our vision of development based on a high value-added service economy, totally open to the outside world. We made the bet to make of Djibouti a strategic, commercial and financial hub with a regional vocation. To that end, we have invested more than $10 billion in port, road, rail, energy and telecommunications infrastructure, and made important reforms in the areas of commercial, fiscal and customs legislations, as well as the financial sector. These infrastructure projects are fueling economic growth of our country while consolidating the foundations of its development. Ladies and gentlemen, in this strategic vision, Djibouti has shown to focus on its financial sector to support its growth and development. Major reforms in recent years in improving the business climate and financial regulations have begun to bear fruit. Islamic finance in Djibouti was born in 2006 with the establishment of the first Islamic bank. Today, the number of operators and financial institutions continues to grow and diversify while continuing to attract new investors. Therefore, in order to fully support the expansion and influence of our financial center, we pay particular attention to the periodic revision and updating of regulatory text in line with international standards. As a result, Islamic banks have a specific legal framework complemented by the establishment of a national Sharia committee. Islamic banks, for their part, show a real dynamism that gives them a growing market share. The anchoring of Islamic finance in the financial landscape of Djibouti is now established, and the outstanding performance of Islamic banks is contributing to the development of our financial sector. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, our countries have made a lot of progress, but there are still many challenges to overcome. Economic growth is not an end in itself, but a means to build a just, equitable, and prosperous society where people are at the center of all concerns. To do this, we must double our efforts and invest heavily in various key strategic areas such as infrastructure, energy, education, health, water, and so on. The question arises to the appropriate and sustainable financing of these investments and the problem of financing small and medium-sized enterprises, the main providers of jobs and factor of wealth creation. As such, the current strong growth of Islamic finance around the world provides an effective and appropriate response to our financing needs. However, while seeking to mobilize international resources, the focus should be on mobilizing locally available resources. And in this regard, it is clear that the contributions of local banks to the financing of the economy is at an insufficient environment. Also, I urge the banking community to become more involved in financing the economy and Islamic banks to expand their range of financial products currently limited to basic Islamic products. Ladies and gentlemen, the solutions offered by Islamic finance are not just incidental or complementary, but real and adapted to our needs. It is crucial to focus reflections on ways and means to remove these obstacles that hinder its rapid development. I remain confident that your work and reflections will provide the answers and insights that would allow us to achieve this goal. May God grant us His grace and blessing. Amen. I thank you for your attention and wish you fruitful work. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
And moving on to the rest of the news, the creation of 2 parliamentarians. The Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed raised this Wednesday 2 parliamentarians to the rank of the officer in the order of June 27. He decorated in the first place Mrs. Safia Almi Jibril, a distinction deserved since the lucky recipient has several legislative proposals to her assets, and all 5 proposals were made for the benefit of the mother and the child. She has worked extensively on the promotion of gender, the fight against female genital mutilation, and the protection of the child. This fight is very important to her since she was the director of the Center Mother and Child. Last year, Mrs. Safia was elected to the post of 2nd Vice President of the Pan-African Parliament, and thus through the election the Republic of Djibouti has a seat in the office of the Pan-African Parliament, representing in passing the countries of East Africa. And for all this journey and her involvement in the parliamentary debate, Mrs. Safia was honored by the Prime Minister for the service rendered to the nation. Then the Prime Minister proceeded to the decoration of the MP Umar Aden Said, elevated to the rank of the officer in 27 June. The MP Umar Aden is a known figure in the National Assembly, sitting on the bench of the National Assembly since 1997. This former head of Dora post was decorated for the first time in 1993 to the rank of the knight before being a member of the parliament. He is the president of the RPP group of the Assembly and accumulate the function of the president of the friendship group Djibouti Ethiopia, and he is also the chairman of the commission on behalf of the Assembly. He is actively working to strengthen the good relationship between Djibouti and Ethiopia, and he plays a very important role in the hemicycle. The Prime Minister did not fail to remind them of the role of the parliamentarians in a democracy and encouraged these lucky recipients to work for the participation in legislative work as representative of the nation. Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim was alternately received yesterday in his office at the General and Staff Army Forces, the Saudi Defense Attaché, and the Ambassador of Great Britain. Army Corps General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim first received the Defense Attaché at the Saudi Embassy in Djibouti, General Ali bin Suleiman, and also present at this encounter was Captain Hassan Yusuf Douali, head of the Arab Cooperation Department of the Djiboutian Army Staff. Since Djibouti is a member of the Arab coalition, the two leaders discussed developments in Yemen and generally in the sub-region. They also discussed ways and means to strengthen relations between the two armies. It is in this context the holding of the next meetings of the two army bilateral committee will take place in order to study many topics of common interest between the two armies. Army Corps General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim then received Britain's ambassador Susanna Moorhead, whose chancellery is in Addis Ababa. The latter also represented her country to the African Union. The meeting was attended by the British Consul in Djibouti, Alan Partinus, and the British Defense Attaché, Colonel Matt Miro, also based in Addis Ababa. On the Djiboutian side, General Tahir Muhammad Ali, Chief of the Defense Staff, and General Hassan Ali Kamil, Advisor to the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, were present. The two sides discussed several issues, including the situation in Somalia and Djibouti's involvement in the AMISOM, and Susanna did not fail to salute the role played by the Djiboutian Army Forces in the peace of the region. And finally, it was a question of establishing cooperative relationship between the two armies for more coordination. Great Britain will intend in the future to benefit the Djiboutian army, its expertise in training, and General Zakaria expressed the wish to see this cooperation relationship materialize and develop as quickly as possible. He also wished for the support of Great Britain in the formation of the Somali army, which will be able to ensure peace and stability in the country. As part of the preparation for the organization of the Arctic Treks scheduled for November 24, the heads of the Department of Youth and Sports met this morning with local authorities in the prefecture of Arta. The General Secretary of the Department, the Director of Divisions, as well as the responsible of sports activities were able to hold talks with the Prefect of Arta, the President of the Regional Council, and the initiator of this sporting event. During the meeting, an organizing committee has been set up and must ensure the smooth running of the event. The participants agreed to avoid the least gaps that contained the good organization of this Syrian walk dedicated to safeguarding peace. The General Secretary stressed that this State Secretariat for Youth and Sports fully assures the authorities of Arta logistical, financial, and media support. In the framework of the Special Needs Children Program, a team from the Ministry of Women and Family visited the Dakhil region in November 5 and 6 to facilitate the Special Awareness and Identification Workshop for children. The objective of this workshop is to share with the administrators, the local elected representative, and the leaders of the association on the stakes of this program so that they can sensitize the population and identify these children in their areas. The workshop gathered the first data on children with disabilities living in the Dakhil region. The program aims to guarantee the rights of these children, including the rights to health, education, and the like. The program started in the capital during the summer, where 185 children with special needs are currently supported by the ministry. In the international news, in the United States, the Republican Party suffered on Tuesday several electoral defeats that took the form of anti-Trump referendums. Democrats won the governorship seats in Virginia and New Jersey as well as the New York City Hall. U.S. President Donald Trump celebrates Wednesday on November 8 the first anniversary of his election to the White House, but his Republican Party suffered the previous day several electoral defeats at the pace of referendum against him. The Democratic candidates of the governor in Virginia and New Jersey, respectively Ralph Northam and Phil Murphy, both defeated Republican candidates at Gillespie and Kim Guadagno, who, if they had kept their distance from Donald Trump, had taken over the vocabulary and their ideas linking, for example, legal immigration and crime. And that's all for tonight's news. Thank you for joining us on RTD and have a great evening.